The first picture here shows where the old railway line used to travel between Newbury Park and Ilford town centre, and you can see at the bottom of the picture we've got Newbury Park Underground Station, and there's a natural line that goes towards where the current plot 1 is, which is I'm calling Disused Railway Bridge number 2. This is taken in 1945 as an aerial shot. Here I've placed over the top of that picture a clearer line in white showing where the route of the old railway line used to go, and when it got to Ilford it used to tail off in 2 directions. In 1945 the railway line was discontinued, the railway tracks were removed, and that whole plot of land, as shown here in the slide, was given over to plots of land to enable the local community to grow their own veg. And you can see an outline of my plot, plot 1, which is by the disused railway bridge there with the white border. Let's move forward to 1999 now. This aerial shot by Google Earth shows the area of land with the railway bridge at the top centre. You can see there in green there's no trees growing except the ones in the right hand corner, and that's the 2 cypress trees that I talked about earlier. And this next picture shows a white border where my plot 1 is on that site. Now we're moving forward to 2003, and you can see on the plot of land there's some trees starting to appear along the boundary just to the left of the railway bridge, and you can already see that plot is beginning to be neglected and overgrown compared to the other plots on the left. This aerial shot is taken in 2010, and you can see that half of my plot, the top half going from left to right, is covered in the branches from the trees that have been planted on the banks. So that's approximately 10 years it's taken for those trees to grow there. And you can see a small parcel of land on the lower half of the plot is being used to cultivate vegetables. Fast forward now to 2013. And you can see that those trees are really becoming established, and at least half the plot is in shade from those trees planted on the bank. There looks like there's been some involvement and work on the lower half of the plot, but to be honest it looks like it's not really well cultivated. This aerial shot from Google Earth is from 2015, and it quite clearly shows the whole of that plot is overgrown and is not being cultivated at all. The trees are merging with the overgrowth from the plot. Here's a Google shot from 2018. Already the plot is covered in thick brambles. You can see that. All the trees along the bank are putting nearly all of the plot in shade. At least 2/3 to 3/4 of the plot is in shade, whereas the other plots on the site are being cultivated. This Google Earth photograph is taken from 2019, and again it shows that no work has been carried out on that plot for a very long time. The trees are very well established, and they're 20 years old now along the bank. And just to make it a little bit easier, I've drawn a rough rectangle around where the plot boundaries are. This Google Earth photograph shows the road going across the top of the railway bridge in 2020, and as you can see on the left, all the trees along the bank are still there. I'm not exactly sure which month it is, but it's taken in 2020 before works began to support the railway bridge on my side, which is on the left. This Google Earth photo was taken in 2020. The trees are still in place on the right hand side, which have since been felled, and there's an access gate on the left, which was traditionally used to gain access to the plots on this side of the allotment plots site. Here's a Google Earth photo of the plot showing all the trees and the overgrown brambles areas filling the whole plot. It was taken in 2020, and I've drawn a rectangle on just to give you an idea of the dimensions of the plot. In 2020, works began to fell the trees in the centre in front of the railway bridge and to shore up more of the underneath side of the railway bridge. In doing so, the workmen took down all the trees in the centre of the canopy area and have thus created a big open light space. This picture shows the grass that's growing on the green grassy bank in the centre of the railway bridge area, and where there's going to be a lot of light coming through to allow light to reach the vegetable beds further in the centre of the plot. We've got these quite young ash and sycamore trees here. In the summer they'll be creating a bit of shade for this area, but the good news is where the trees were chopped down during the summer for the support for the bridge, we've got a nice big open gap in the canopy here, which should light up the rest of the plot in the middle section over here behind this apple tree. So I've collected some basic data and information about my part of the world. My plot is situated on the northeastern part of the outskirts of London, and technically we're in the southeast part of the country. So I get prevailing winds from the southwest coming in from the Atlantic Ocean predominantly, as you can see there on the right, and we've got a number of pieces of information about the plot. The average rainfall up at the top there on the left is roughly 525 millimetres of rain per year, and that's broken down into monthly expectations. It's not a particularly cold place. We get temperatures, right up to the 30s Celsius, down to -5, but on average it's quite a warm part of the world in London. And we get a few frost days per year, as you might expect. A few in the winter months, about 20, 21 days of frost per year. And the wind speeds are generally quite low. It's only when we get a bad storm that the wind speeds pick up. So that's my plot, and we're about 12 metres above sea level. Something very low down at sea level. So that's the information I'm going to use to work out what's happening on my plot. So this is the plan, guys. It's a bit of an ambitious plan, but anyway, that's the plan. And as you can see, what we're looking at is we're looking to the south up the top, and the railway bridge is labelled up there at the top of the picture, and the north is down the bottom. I'm going to focus in on the growing area first, if I can. And as you can see, then all the way along the top we've got the bank as it stands at the moment, with light coming in from the centre area. The right and left areas are going to be covered in shade from the trees, but I'm still going to try and grow some basic things in there. Up on the left you see I've got some ideas for some terraces, and one of the terraces is going to have a hedge growing in it to try to filter out the fumes from the traffic in the road above. We've also got a Hugelkultur bed down the bottom, which is my next project on the allotment plot, to dig down, bury some logs, put some of the bramble tops in there, cover it with soil and let that rot down naturally, build a raised bed behind a loose dry stone retaining wall. And you can see I've got some trees labelled up, sycamore, ash and so on, up the left hand side. So the bed shapes are sort of curved on the edges, and they'll be bordered with some perennial plants to stop any weeds from growing in. Like the Welsh onions there, I've got labelled up on bed 2 and so on. So the bed sizes are going to be about 4 metres long by 1.2 metres, something like that. It's about 13 foot by 3.5 foot wide, something like that. And you can see down along the south now, all the way along the south part of the plot from left to right, I've drawn some circle sizes of different sizes, and they're labelled up with A or C and so on. So the A means apple trees, the P is pear trees, the B is a buddleia there on the right, and then we've got small or very dwarf apple trees and pear trees there. And then going into the beds themselves, all the way along the south part of the beds, you've got the letter C, and that means currant bush. So I'm planning to create a forest garden type effect with these trees on the north side and shrubs and so on. And then we've got the taller canopy trees from the sycamore and ash up on the bank. Also, we see I've got space along the front here where I'm going to grow some climbers, such as beans, runner beans, cucumbers and so on, sweet peas, and over on the left hand corner is where I'm going to have the entrance to the site, the plot, and I'm going to make that a climbing frame as well. So I'm focusing in on the area that I'm actually working on at the moment, and I'm up to about 7 meters, which is where you can see the apple tree there is. On the 7 meter mark you can see an apple tree. That's the one I've got on the site already. And then the one on the left is one I've ordered for delivery in January. And the very dwarf apple I've already got on site that somebody donated. And then I've worked up to about there, the 7 meter mark, so I've got a long way to go to get to the rest of the plot. That will come next year at some point. I've got another Hugelkultur bed, and I might grow some squash up on the bank there. They'll be out the way. And then eventually I'd like to build a shed and a wildlife pond. And you can see I've got those drawn in there. The wildlife pond, different depths, and the shed. Hopefully I'll be allowed a shed to do some potting up. That will be facing south, and it will receive as much of the sunlight as I can possibly get. Eventually I'm going to be collecting my own compost, making my own compost and leaf mould. And the W is where I'm planning to do water runoff from the containers for the compost. So yeah guys, that's the plan. Now down here at the bottom we can see that I've done a drawing of a side profile of the Hugelkultur process. So I'm going to dig a trench 18 inches deep, and then on top of that, on the outside on the left there'll be a retaining wall, another 18 inches. Might not be that tall in the end, but I'm going to try and build it so it's stable. And then that will give me 36 inches in which to put my logs, my bramble tops at the bottom, then the logs, then some earth, manure and mulch. And then I can start using those beds straight away. That's the plan anyway. So that's for the Hugelkultur bed over on the left hand side at the bottom of the bank. Quite a lot of work to do before the spring. We'll see how far I get. That's it guys. Hope you enjoyed that tour round. Thank you very much.